In this video, I'm going to discuss communication, or lack thereof, amongst not only family members, but with other people in society. I see it all too often, even with family members. There's a lack of empathy, compassion for each other. It seems that's not fostered or taught with children nowadays. So when you go out into society, what you end up having are people only looking out for themselves. I was talking today to a gentleman. I think he was about in his late 50s, early 60s. And he has a 19-year-old son. And they're originally from Brooklyn, New York. And he moved them 20 years ago to San Diego and eventually up here to Los Angeles. And his kid is having a very difficult time. His mentality isn't transitioning to the mode out here, out west, where everything's a lot more chill and laid back. That usually stems from the East Coast being condensed. It's overpopulated. When you come out west, it's wide open space, laid back attitude. Of course, in the big cities, you can have a more faster paced lifestyle, but in general, out west, it's a very laid back attitude. And he's having the kid of this guy is having a very difficult time adjusting. And what he was telling me was, it's almost as if he was looking down on him for not being up to speed. And I told him, well, how long did it take you to adjust to the mentality of the West Coast? And he said 5 years. I said, okay. Well, you still had to go through a process, a period of adjusting. And then I also asked him, have you traveled around? Have you got to see other parts of the country or the world? He said, yes. And I said, what about your son? He said, no. The only traveling he did was when he brought him to San Diego from the East Coast. That plays a factor. If your kids aren't used to traveling and you uproot them, all of a sudden, you can't expect them to be up to speed with you, which you're already an adult. You should be up to speed because you've had all these experiences in traveling. So, I later asked him, rather than just let your son have a hard time, have you done anything to make the transition for him easier? He said no. So I suggested to him that he should talk to him. And he looked at me like it was a novel concept. I guess because he's older, he feels that the kid doesn't know any better. And that's another problem I see with adults. They feel their kids don't know any better. But I'm seeing a lot nowadays, kids sometimes have a lot more sense than adults. They could actually help adults. And this has inflicted even adults. Adults don't even want to talk now. So I suggested that he sit down with his son when he's having one of his episodes where he's having a very difficult time in his room. He's closing himself off. Believe it or he tells me that, I shouldn't talk to him. He doesn't want to be talked to. Believe it or not, kids, when they do that, they're asking to be talked to. But they don't go and look to be talked to because they feel no one can understand them. So you being the adult should make the effort to talk to your kids. It's a very simple thing. You just apply it. You ask them what it is that they're feeling, what they're thinking. In doing so, You let them, you reaffirm that what they think and what they have to say matters. Because a lot of times kids, they shell up when they feel they're not being heard or whatever they think doesn't matter. So just the simple art of just conversing with your kids if they're going through a hard time and asking them, well, in this case, Brooklyn, New York is not San Diego. So what he could have asked him is, well, look, this is not Brooklyn, New York, this is San Diego. What could we do to make your transition here a little more comfortable? That's all you have to do is just ask. He may have a very good answer. You'll be surprised. Kids, they have a lot of answers. Instead of making the situation worse, talking usually helps. No one wants to do that because they're too busy with their lives. They think everybody needs to be up to speed. The art of compassion is lost. Everybody thinks people are evolved. Compassion, empathy are things that human beings have not evolved with. I say human beings are still in the dark ages when it comes to compassion, empathy, understanding.
Why are you waiting over here? Everybody was over here. You don't go this far away.
Still in the dark ages. A very simple act of communicating can resolve a lot of problems. The art of conflict resolution. Simple talking. Simply communicate with one another based on solving both parties' issues. Both people have to be willing to sit down and talk. That seems to be a very difficult concept with people nowadays. There's too much of an ego with people. I'm not going to turn this into a rant, but try letting go of your ego and talking to people would be a great application to start practicing this. And it doesn't matter how old you are. Anybody can learn this simple art. Then again, this is just an opinion.